Hey guys, Whitney here. Welcome to the Passive Investing Made Simple Bootcamp. I'm your host, Whitney Elkins Hutton, and I'm so excited that you're joining me here today. I have an exciting talk for you lined up for you today. Anyways, if you haven't done so already, we do this bootcamp live once a month to help you learn some deeper skills, just going beyond just like understanding and remembering, but deep skills to help you fortify your financial position, but also be an unstoppable investor. That way, when you go into your next passive investing deal, you are investing from a position of strength. So make sure to check out passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com in order to get access to these bootcamp webinars that I do on a monthly basis, these skill building bootcamp webinars. This week, we're going to tackle money for tomorrow. I just recently released a book with bigger pockets titled Money for Tomorrow, How to Build and Protect Generational Wealth. We are going to do a really high level 30,000 foot overview of some of the skills that you must master in order to build generational wealth. And again, these skills, some of them we're going to start off pretty basic, and then we're going to build upon them across the course of an hour. But these skills are skills that you must master if you want to win the generational wealth game and invest in a passive portfolio from a position of strength. That's what we all want to do. All right, I have my contact information on the screen for you here. If you're listening on your favorite podcast player of choice, go to the YouTube page and look up the webinar, Money for Tomorrow, How to Build and Protect Generational Wealth. Now, if we haven't met already, again, my name is Whitney Elkins Hutton. I'm the Director of Investor Education here at passiveinvesting.com. I'm also the founder of Ash Wealth. And from both of these positions, I coach investors on how to get into passive real estate. Now, I don't have a degree in passive real estate or private equity. I actually started off a real estate investor, much like you, completely by accident, maybe with some intentionality. Back in 2002, I bought a house with a significant other. And about a month later, the relationship fell apart. And here I had a house. And I was like, what am I going to do with this thing? So I stuffed it full of roommates, completed the rehab on the property, and I sold it. And that's when it dawned on me, I actually have been able to unhook the value I create in the world with the time that I have to put into it. And so that led me down this whole winding road of scaling fix and flip portfolio, a single family rental portfolio, purchasing multifamily buildings, being a general partner on multifamily assets, raising capital. And I get to spend my time here with you, primarily at passiveinvesting.com, showing you the ins and outs and how I scaled this portfolio of over 6,500 multifamily units, 2,200 self-storage units, and over 15 express car washes, including a myriad of other assets. Now, today, we aren't going to be talking specifically about that because the skills that you have to create wealth and grow wealth are very different than being able to create generational wealth. We have to be able to add additional tools to our tool belt. And actually, we're going to be diving into some of those skills that I had to learn when my back was up against the wall, settling over 5 estates within my family with a combined loss of over $700,000. Now, if that loss, and it's not like it's these losses were erosions out of my family members' wealth. It's not like I had to write a check for $700,000 to the IRS, which some people do whenever they have to settle an estate. But this is erosion of wealth. This is money that didn't have to be lost within this portfolio. And if you compound out that loss at 7% over 30 years, you guys that are here live, go to the Q&A box, just take a quick guess on how much money that would be lost to the next generation of my family. 700,000 compounded at 7% over 30 years. What do you think that equates to? Just take a quick guess. Go to the Q&A box. We got a quiet audience here today. Oh, a couple of people chimed in there. Let's see here. Yeah, we're a little bit north of that. We're at $5.3 million lost to the future of my family's wealth plan. And here's the thing, this situation isn't unique, okay? I see it every day with investors that I work with, that they are setting themselves up in a scenario where they're going to be losing at minimum $100, $200, $300,000. They don't know it. They absolutely don't know it. And that's just what we can see today. That doesn't even account for mistakes that they're going to make in their investing, nor what's going to happen whenever they pass their wealth on to the next generation. Okay. And here's the thing, we as investors, and I've been in the situation too, secretly feel this pain, but we can't put our finger on it. Okay. We're just like, wow, do we have enough? Or do we have enough invested? Are we making enough cash flow? Do we have enough equity? Like, we still have this anxiety that we might be a little bit broke by the time we get to the finish line. And you know what? You're not alone whenever, if you feel this way. And it's because the root problem is that we as investors have been trained that the next deal that we do, the next stream of income, will solve all of our problems. Okay. And like I said at the very beginning, learning how to create wealth and grow it are two skill sets that we over concentrate on as investors. We have to be able to fill in the gaps with learning how to keep it, invest from a position of strength, and then be able to pass it on effectively. Okay. And this is what I call learning how to win the wealth game. Okay. In order to win any game, just think back when you learned how to play Monopoly, Catan, whatever, that name a game, doesn't matter. You had to understand the objective of the game. You had to know the rules, and then you had to learn all the different strategies to play successfully. Okay. And so wealth is no different. Okay. We have to have an objective. And for me, generational wealth is having enough passive income to do what you want, when you want, with whom you want, for as long as you want. Okay. And being able to pass that on to my heirs, not just the money, but the knowledge and the skills, because that's very important, because they need to be able to steward what you built, what you've created for the future generations. All right. So once we understand the objective, now we got to understand the rules. And we're going to touch on these rules at a very high level today. In order to win the generational wealth game, you have to be able to create wealth in your sleep. Okay. Now, most of us are, probably started off trading time for dollars. We went to, school, got a great job. We scaled the corporate ladder. We're getting more and more rewarded for the value we create in our world. But we have to know how to figure out how to take that active income and put it into passive income. Because it's when we put it into assets that kick off passive income, now we're creating true wealth, because we are untaching how we create our value in the world from how much time we spend. Then we got to learn how to hang on to that. We got to learn how to keep it. We got to learn how to plug our financial moat, all those potential leaks and breakdowns and cracks in that moat. Then we have to learn how to grow it in our sleep. And that's what most people are wanting to do whenever they invest passively. They're wanting to grow it, and we tap into certain fundamentals there. And then we have to be able to pass it on. Here's the thing. Most investors never learn how to master all four of these rules or levers, okay? And if you don't control your wealth, it's going to control you, okay? So today's webinar, okay, again, this is as with all of our webinars, it's for educational purposes only. Nothing here is financial advice, tax advice, legal advice. So make sure to take this information back to your financial team and understand how it applies to your situation. And if you want to get a copy of, the book, Money for Tomorrow, you can pick that up on Amazon. You can also pick that up on Bigger Pockets, but that will go into further detail some of these concepts. Again, we're going to start off pretty basic, and then we're going to start building very quickly upon these concepts. And, throughout the year, I'm going to take some of these concepts and pull them out, and we'll drill down really deep on them. Okay, so we understand our wealth objective. Now we need to understand how we need to create it, okay? What is that rule number one? Well, in order to master rule number one, we have some strategies. First, you have to have a strategy of a clear path to win. We have to know what your income and balance sheets are, and you have to have spending habits so you always win. Now, I'm going to leave a lot of this for, for those of you who go back and view Money for Tomorrow, but we'll touch on just, the clear path to win, understanding those balance sheets right now. And I want to tell you a little story. So for me and my family, I had two grandfathers, like most of us do. They both were in the Army Air Corps, both homesteaded, both hunted, both raised their own cattle for personal use and for sale. They both had full-time jobs in the oil business and had oil and mineral rights on their properties. In all accounts, you would think they would have the same result in life, right? But they took two divergent paths on how they transitioned into retirement, how they set up their estate. Grandfather number one sold his land outright to the oil company, including his cattle. He bought an RV to travel and fish and lived off his pension. Okay. Grandfather number two kept all his land to have managed, bought a computer at age 82 to learn how to trade stocks and manage money. And guess what? I was the one that taught him how to use the computer, and then invested in real estate and notes. And he also traveled. Now, guys, I just got a new computer, so maybe help me out. Let's pop on over to the chat box and see if that pops up here for us. But go to the chat box and let me know, which grandfather do you think financially fared in his retirement? Who fared a little bit better here? And we got a couple answers here. Number two. Yep. As you would guess, number two. Why is that? Okay. And that's what we want to like kind of pick apart here today. What are the principles here that grandfather number two actually put into action? Okay. One of those is understanding the balance sheet. Okay. So if we go back here, grandfather number two kept assets that kept giving him income. I love it when somebody said they had different mindsets. Yes, they did. They definitely had different mindsets around this. But, you know, again, we're trying to win the wealth game, okay? Because if we can, the wealth game is still going to give us that freedom, time freedom and choice freedom, freedom to create the impact that we want in the world, okay? But we have to take a certain path to get there. And part of that is understanding the balance sheet. So this is borrowed from Robert Kiyosaki's work, but you know, here's a kind of an understanding. Most of us graduate from college. We just have the shirt on our back, maybe a little bit of money in the bank, and we need to go get a job to start earning a salary to cover our expenses. Okay, for all intents and purposes, unless we have assets, we're pretty quote unquote poor. Okay, now, as we start acquiring assets, they tend to come with liabilities, okay? At least for me, I was trained, okay, you know, I got my job, now let's go buy a car, let's go buy a home, let's go buy all of these things, pay off my student loan debt. Now, these are assets, I can put them to use in my world, but they come with liabilities, and I still have to cover my expenses, okay? My assets, this car, this home, okay? They're quote unquote assets, but they're not producing anything for me. Okay. It's only when I learn how to transition to the balance sheet of the rich do I start investing in things like real estate, maybe stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, definitely notes, and other types of intellectual property maybe attached to a business. It's when I start methodically investing in assets, switching my active income that I get from my job into assets that are going to kick off into income, rental income, dividend income, interest income, royalty income. That is when I'm going to unlock true financial freedom. And most people here, probably you understand this, okay? And I want to limit my liabilities as much as possible because that's definitely going to lower my expenses as well, okay? The other key thing here is that you also have to learn how to optimize your income, okay? Again, we're talking about, you know, taking the active income and shifting it into passive income. Now, I want to ask you guys a little pop quiz right now. Out of everybody here, the employee, the self-employed, business owner, and investor, who gets taxed the most? Go to the chat box and let me know. Who do you think gets taxed the most here? Okay, we got a couple of answers coming in. I'm going to think about this. Okay. Oh, we got a couple of answers. Okay. Employee and self-employed employees. Okay. The self-employed category actually gets taxed the most. Okay. So think about this. the employee doesn't have to pay, the payroll taxes that a business owner or a self-employed person would have to do. Okay. But the self-employed person does. They do have to pay all those FICA taxes. Okay. So actually, at the end of the day, this was a shift that occurred back in the 1990s with our taxation rules. The self-employed person, think like your doctors, your lawyers, if you're a private engineer, your contract type people. These are the people that get taxed the most. So I understand everybody wants to, unhook the time on how they create value in the world. It seems logical to move from employee to self-employed, but what would be a better jump is learning how to optimize your income to go from employee or self-employed into being a business owner or an investor. And when it comes to actually getting the best tax breaks, business owner and investor do get really great tax breaks, okay? But only the investor gets to leverage their time to the fullest potential. Okay. And so again, these are concepts that we need to master if we're going to create true wealth. Okay. And wealth is doing what we want, when we want, with whom we want. All right. Meaning that we have not just the financial freedom, but we have freedom of time, freedom of choice, and freedom to create that impact in the world. All right. Okay, and guys, remember, you can pick up the book. We dive deeper into the book, into these various concepts. But I want you to give you, again, the overarching, what's the objective, what are the rules, and what are the strategies you need to master in each area. Okay, our second strategy here, or excuse me, rule that we have to master is learning how to keep wealth. Now, most people, and I just recently got off a podcast this morning, every investor wants to, they look at, oh my goodness, I'm getting taxed as an employee or a self-employed person. Let me become an investor and immediately learn how to grow this. Okay, that's kind of like the logical progression here. And I would argue that you kind of have to learn how to keep wealth and grow wealth at the same time. But if I had to prioritize which rule comes first, it's learning to keep what you're bringing in. Why is that? That's going to allow you to do a few key things. One, build your rock solid financial foundation, that financial moat. It's going to help you protect your assets, and you're going to have more money in order to invest. Okay. So there's 6 things that I tend to go over in this category. 4, we're going to dive into, spend a little bit of time and get pretty intimate about. And that is, number 1, learning how to use interest wisely. Now, I did a webinar back in February that dove really deep into these 6 areas that I'm going to cover briefly with you here today. So if you want that webinar, go to youtube.com, to the passiveinvesting.com page. Dot is spelled out DOT, and you can look up that webinar, that bootcamp webinar we did. But the first thing here, when we understand how to keep wealth, is that we want to learn how to leverage interest wisely. Now, it means we can pay it, it means we can earn it, but I'm specifically talking about all those debt products that you have in your life: credit cards, personal loans, car payments, all of your debt on all of your real estate assets. Okay, even if they bring in cash flow, we want to put them through this type of mathematical model. Okay, because if you're, watching the financial, news in the world, somebody would have you believe that you need to pay off your highest payment first, or that you have to pay off the debt with the highest interest rate first. And there's actually a more nuanced way to maximize your return on your dollars that you deploy. And that's putting everything through this mathematical model, which is what we call the cash flow index. Essentially, what we want to do is we want to take the loan balance divided by the minimum monthly payment and create an index number. The smaller the index number means the quicker we should get rid of that debt. And the higher the index number, we might either want to kind of put a pin in that debt and table it for later, or we might want to, once we get rid of like the danger zone debt, the debt that's very inefficient for our lives, we want to maybe renegotiate that debt. Okay. Some of you posted in the chat, I borrowed $1 million with monthly interest payments of only $1 for life. That is pretty effective debt. That is not something that we would probably want to pay off. Okay. Ways to keep your money. Number 2, learn to leverage insurance wisely. Now, insurance is really a way for us to outsource liability. Okay, a liability in our health, with probably our number one asset, which is going to be our home, or the roof over our head if you're renting. Probably one of the most dangerous things that most people do on a daily basis is drive. So you want to make sure you have high quality auto insurance. You certainly want to guard against your loss of income, be it you're working in W-2, self-employed, business owner, or even investor. Make sure to guard against your income being lost through disability insurance. Think about getting an umbrella insurance policy. They're pretty relatively inexpensive, and those, especially if you're an investor, and coordinate all those things, all these different insurance policies. And then you can think about getting life insurance policies, now either term or permanent. I go into great detail in the book on, kind of my thoughts on both categories. Term is great and inexpensive for somebody just starting off. Get enough term life insurance to pay off your debt, like your student loan debt that doesn't go away when you pass away. And if you're married and you don't want your spouse to have to sell the cars or take on a heavy car payment, maybe, carry enough to cover the car payment, maybe even carry enough to pay off the house for them so they can, have choices after you pass away. And then a similar thought goes into more permanent life insurance, but there's ways that we can actually use our permanent life insurance policy to build a family bank. Okay. And if you were on our conversation yesterday with Rod Zembrowski with Money Insights, you were well aware on some of the ways that we can leverage more permanent insurance like whole life insurance. Now, while insurance is great, there are some gotchas here. Okay. These are the ways that a lot of people do leave a lot of money on the table. One, they're just not insured. Okay, they're not outsourcing their liability in this area, and they just suffer a disastrous health disaster. And now everything's being paid out of pocket. Or in the case of a friend of mine, they got their car stolen, didn't have comprehensive insurance, and all of his work tools were in the car. So not only does he not have a car, he also doesn't have tools for his work. Okay. And he can't get that covered. Now all of that's coming, he has to find, almost $80,000 to replace the car and the tools that were in the car. So simple things like this. Other gotchas, we want to make sure that we're not overpaying for policies. Okay. We want to get the best quality policy for the best cost. A lot of times people don't renegotiate annually. Okay. I just renegotiated a trailer insurance policy that I got in January because I found a better option that saved me over $300 a year. Okay. With the same insurance company. I just went through a different broker. That's it. Same policy, same company, different broker, and I saved over $300. Okay. So learn to negotiate. Not having somebody put it in the chat, nice. Yes, very nice. I love that, right? And just think about this. Most people get very attached to the relationship with their agent or with their broker. You want to be able to get the best policy at the best cost. Okay. Also, not having the most appropriate riders on a policy. And one thing that I can think of, especially after COVID, is a lot of people, they have homeowners insurance. And they also have an office at home. Make sure your home office is actually covered on your home insurance policy. Okay. Even as a rental policy, a lot of times they're not. Okay. And then not adjusting your terms often enough. And for those of you who were on my webinar back in February, I told a story where we lost 1,100 homes in a matter of like 3 or 4 hours here in Boulder, Colorado, a couple years ago due to a fire that happened very on the outskirts of town and invaded town. Most people were underinsured on their property. Properties had gone up 25% in the previous couple years, but people hadn't called their insurance company to adjust their coverage. So now they're out of pocket $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, not just to rebuild their house, but also replace all their belongings. Okay. We want to make sure that we're covered for these devastating losses. All right. Now, so we covered 2 areas, reducing and eliminating taxes. This is one that we talk all about when it comes to investing in real estate. But there's a simple checklist here to follow. I also brought Tom Wheelwright on in March to have a deeper discussion about depreciation and how that applies to real estate. You can check out his book, Tax-Free Wealth. Okay, so here's kind of like the checklist, the 5 big categories that we're looking at when we're wanting to reduce our taxes. What kind of deductions can we take, including depreciation? How can we convert our income utilizing entities? Okay, maybe, you have a kid. How can you pay your kid? You need to work in the business. Maybe you have another dependent in the household. How can you utilize their dependent tax bracket to leverage tax-free income? How can you entities, LLC, S Corp, stuff like that. Then what I just described was shifting income to lower tax brackets. Then how can you eliminate income with tax credits? Okay. And the reason why you want to do steps 1, 2, and 3 first is because that lowers your adjusted gross income, potentially making you more to qualify more readily for tax credits. And then number 5, defer your incomes into IRA, into qualified retirement plans. But the thing is here, Wall Street has us trained to start here, deferring our income, when we should be working with our strategist or our tax strategist to maximize steps 1 through 4 first. People leave tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table from taxes, okay? There's a lot of wealth being eroded here. Make sure you're working with a strategist in order to optimize your taxes appropriately. Okay? Reduce and eliminate investment fees. This is another big one. This is another big one where you can pick up tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars and keep it in your portfolio. Low-hanging fruit here, make sure to, take a look at your banking fees, credit card fees. Let's not pay any fees. Let's try to negotiate as minimal loan fees as possible. But the fee that most people are paying a huge amount on are their retirement fees. Those fees in their IRAs, in their retirement plans, especially 401ks. Now, I've got a little slide here that's going to probably sting a little bit. Before I show it to you, go to the chat box. How many, and guys, when you respond, I'm the only one that can see it, if you noticed. I want you to go here and tell me, do you have a retirement account or not? And will it have over $500,000 by the time you want to retire? So yes, no, yes, yes, no, yes. Like, just go over to the chat box. I want to kind of, no, okay. Okay. Lots of people have a retirement account. Several people, they're aiming to have over $500,000 in their retirement account. Okay, you need to pay attention to these next 2 slides. Okay, so when we look at our retirement account, there's some assumptions here. This person has 25 years to retirement. They're maxing out their 401k at about $20,500 a year. I went ahead and said that their employer is not giving them a match. They're on average earning 7% over that 25-year timeline, and they're paying a very modest, low 1.5% investment fee. That's combo of all the marketing fees, expense ratios, everything like that. Okay, which is very low. Most people are probably closer to 2.5%. And if we added in a match, this actually makes the scenario worse, not better. Most people are set up to lose over 30% of their portfolio to fees. The thing is, it's a death by 1,000 cuts. You don't see it until it's too late. Okay. So who wouldn't want to keep an extra $100,000 in their portfolio? Me. So this is something, to make sure to partner with like a fee-only fiduciary advisor. Look at different, partner with your 401k. Heck, if you can, get that money back into your own IRA in self-directed retirement account and cut this annual fee closer to 0.5%. Learn how to manage your money. Right? Now, for those of you who said that you're going to retire over $500,000, which quite honestly should be most of us here, You also should be thinking about this little thing called provisional income, working with the tax strategist, 5 to 7, maybe even 10 years out to figure out how to get money from this tax deferred bucket over to your tax-free bucket as quickly as possible. A lot of people tap into Roth conversions to do this, but there's a couple different ways to do this. Well, let's first understand what provisional income is and what that impact is to us. So provisional income is a calculated figure used to determine whether a portion of your Social Security benefits are actually taxable. Okay, when you cross the provisional income threshold, you may be taxed up to 85% on your Social Security. All right. So a lot of moving parts here. You need to work with your accountant to understand what the impact is to you. But here's the thing. Most individuals are probably going to earn more than 34,000, at least that we talked to here, high net worth income earners are going to have more than $34,000 coming in on their Social Security, or jointly $44,000 with their spouse. Just think about that. Up to 85% of that could go away if you were counting on that. Now, there are 3 assets that actually sidestep provisional income: Roth IRAs, anything that any distributions that you take out of a cash flow life insurance policy. Okay, you want to make sure you organize that correctly, and any of your minimum distributions from your IRA that fall below your standard deduction. Okay, all that comes out tax-free. Here's the thing. Jointly, your standard deduction with your spouse is probably going to be $20,500 or $22,000, somewhere in there, at least right now this year. I don't know how much you got in your Roth IRA, but do you plan on retiring on more than $22,000 a year with your spouse? Me, I do. So this is the oncoming train. Most people aren't seeing in their tax-deferred IRA portfolios. And the thing is, the tax-deferred IRA portfolio is great for compounding growth, but it's also nasty at compounding taxes. So make sure to work with your accountant on this. All right, so we covered 5 areas of keeping wealth. The reason why I spend a lot of time here is because we talk a lot about how to create wealth. We talk a lot about how to grow wealth. Those are 2 different skill sets. We need to build out these skill sets on how to keep wealth and pass it on appropriately. All right, so planning for your incapacity. This is another area where a lot of people let their wealth be eroded. Case in point in my life, my father maxed out 2 life insurance policies and, or not life insurance policies, health policies, because of, medical conditions. This is before Obamacare. Was about to get kicked off of these. And then we had like another setback whenever his paperwork on how to handle his end of life wasn't logged correctly at the hospital. And so it just created a very unfortunate situation for my mom and for my father. But planning for your incapacity, just think about it. It is not estate planning. It is a part of estate planning, but it's not estate planning. And the thing is, most people don't do this. They don't think they're going to get sick or suffer an injury or get in that auto wreck that could incapacitate them. Okay, so they leave it for a later time. But this is something that I really encourage everybody to take a look at right now, because this planning for your incapacity now can keep an unexpected event from depleting your wealth. And at minimum, take a look at setting up a living will, healthcare directives, and a durable power of attorney. Work with your attorney on that. There's other resources online, but if you have an attorney, most people do here, go ahead and work with them on that. And then if you want to set up kind of a bank of funds to help cover, for your incapacity, think about getting that life insurance in place, be it term or permanent. There's, advantages, disadvantages to both types of policy. But even the cash flow life insurance policy, what we talked about yesterday on our webinar, with Money Insights, can be a great opportunity for us to create an additional stream of income to draw upon during this incapacitation. All right, so that sums up at a very high level, keeping wealth. Okay, let's tackle growing wealth, and then we're gonna go over some high level passing wealth on, and then we'll open the floor. growing wealth, we have to master the 7 pillars of wealth. We have to understand the 3 assets that are going to grow true wealth. And then we need to understand how to reduce the drag of opportunity costs in our portfolio. Now, I'm going to cover just some of these things in chunks here. We talk a lot here at passiveinvesting.com on how to take advantage of the 4 tenets of conservative wealth. And that is investing in assets that preserve capital, create cash flow, generate equity growth for it, and tax benefits. Okay. But we want to, and I'm going to kind of cruise through these slides here, but we also want to understand how to leverage the other 3 accelerators for creating wealth. Okay. So I'm putting these up here for you because we dive deep on these 7 pillars of wealth every time we do a webinar here at passiveinvesting.com. But now we want to understand the 3 amplifiers, and that is, how do we use leverage wisely? How do we hedge inflation? And how do we invest with experts? If we can learn to evaluate any investment that we go into and make sure that it helps us preserve capital, create cash flow, tap into equity growth, leverage tax benefits with us, okay, that is really going to help us reduce the volatility in our portfolio. It's when we get into assets that only have 1 pillar of wealth to them, maybe 2, that's when things become a little rough, because if that pillar goes down, we don't have other things supporting us. Okay. So take, for example, multifamily assets recently, have been experiencing compressed cash flow, but they're still very good at preserving capital. Okay. If they're properly funded, they can still create equity growth. Okay. If we don't have to sell in a down market, they're kicking off tax benefits for us. Okay. There's still ample opportunity for us to make money. Whereas if you just have an investment that's essentially a one-trick pony, okay, then you get wiped out. Now, there's really only 3 assets here that will help us grow our wealth, that will tap into multiple of these wealth pillars, if not all of them. And that is life insurance, okay, whole life insurance, real estate, and businesses. Okay. Now, here's the thing. You can combine these 3 things together. Okay. We saw an example yesterday where you could use life insurance to invest in a business that owns real estate and take advantage of all those different ways to preserve capital, create cash flow, create equity growth, use leverage through your life insurance policy. Okay. Invest with amazing operators into an inflation hedging assets. Okay. So there's ways to kind of put this all together. Notice what's not on here is our stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Okay. Why? Is because they tend to be faulty at having one of those 7 pillars. And I'm going to show you an example here in a second. So if we apply these pillars, now these numbers over here on the right, these are old. Those were from last year. I need to update those. But this just gives you an understanding of why some assets perform better than others. It's because they're tapping into multiple pillars of wealth and those wealth accelerators. All right. All right. Now let's talk about that last rule, passing wealth on. All right. Here, you need to have a 3-phase protection plan. You need to learn how to build your board and understand why most people fail at passing their wealth on. So here's a quick checklist. I encourage everybody to kind of like take a screenshot of this. But step number 1, plan for your incapacity. We already talked about that in our keeping wealth phase. Okay. We're going to, you also need to understand how to legally communicate the passing of your assets, how to safeguard, have safeguards in place to ensure that your wealth transfers, have a fully executed I love you plan, train your successors, train your heirs, and then set up your board of advisors. Okay. So what does it mean to protect your assets? Okay. We've got that living will with healthcare directives and power of attorneys. Okay. That means that your health can't drain your wealth. You have your living trust with pour over wills. This means that if you're forgetful about moving an asset into your trust, okay, that pour over will make it go over to your trust. It still has to be probated, but when it goes through probate, the probate judge will be like, oh, this actually isn't an asset owned by the estate. It's now an asset of the trust. Case closed. But you still made that a very public process for everybody. So make sure if you have a living trust, put everything into your trust as much as possible. Having a cash flow life insurance policy is going to guard against you messing up as an investor. Okay. Especially if you allow that cash value of life to build up. If you pass away and you leave a few $1,000,000 to your heirs, whether you were a great investor or not, you're still helping the next generation build wealth. Okay. But again, you're here, you're going to dive into the principles of money for tomorrow. You're going to be an unstoppable investor. Okay. And then you need to make sure that you take the last 4 steps that we covered, because so much wealth when you pass away can be eroded by lawyers, through taxes, through advisory fees. Okay. And we want to make sure we got all of these things buttoned up. Now, this was a lesson I learned so much the hard way. Okay. These aren't things that you can defer to like a later time. These are best tackled now when you're got time, you have clear head, clear thinking. Because let's just put you in a little situation. Okay. Maybe one morning you get a call and that a close loved one of yours has passed away and they've been struggling with health issues. Okay. Maybe dementia. All right. And just things haven't been that rosy between the two of you. Maybe you just haven't been talking for a while. You're the one that's handling the estate, but you have no idea where anything is. Okay. Nor where the original documents are. Okay. But you're handed a set of keys to a distressed property. Okay. In my case, there was a ton of hoarding, obsolescence. It was even going through foreclosure. All right. Not only are you put in a position to deal with the emotions of the loss of this loved one, now you got to deal with the traumas of settling this estate. Now, here's the thing. This is not an uncommon situation. Almost every single time I, tell this story during a talk, be it virtual or in person, I get a plethora of emails of people who are saying, oh my goodness, you opened my eyes. I need to take care of this for my family. Or you just described the situation I'm in with my aging family members. Okay. Regardless, you can execute this plan, okay, the CYA plan, or I love you plan, as I so lovingly call it, for yourself, or help guide other family members through it. Okay. Because remember, even if they plan for their incapacity and they got that will or trust in place, you still need to know other things. The executor still needs to know other things. Because really what this plan is trying to do is to take chaos and turn it into order. All right. So a few things that you can do or help your family members do right now is for bank accounts, checking account, savings account. Think about putting a paid on death provision. Okay. You get to, designate beneficiaries for your checking and savings account. You get to designate beneficiaries for life insurance policies, for retirement accounts. All right. Especially if somebody has a will, encourage them to get all these paid on death provisions in place, those beneficiaries named and in place. Why? Because now that asset doesn't have to go through probate and be publicly declared. Okay. In most states, I can't name a state where it had to be publicly declared. It would be able to pass on to that heir pretty smoothly. Create list and store with your trust or will, okay, all the account information. Okay. What all accounts do you have? Who are the beneficiaries on those accounts? What assets do you have? Who's the contact for those assets? Property managers, operator names, okay? This just helps your executor be organized for when they, beneficiary, of your account and the trustee, next trustee, to be able to administer the estate as you designed it to be administered. Go so far as to label all your personal utilities and the contact information, all right? When my mom passed away, I did not know there were 35 options for her to get a gas company in the area that she lived in. I had to go through, I didn't have the bills or anything like that. I had to go through each company and call them until I found the one company where she held her account. Okay. And then keep all this organized. I like using, things like LastPass in order to organize login information, passwords. The cool thing about some of these, password aggregators, password vaults, is that you can actually program in who those accounts, who that vault gets passed on to, under what provisions, maybe say after 5 days, if I'm unable to appear, that gets passed on to the next person. Here's the trusted person in my family I want that to go on to. That way you're making this process pretty smooth for them. You also want to train your executor or executress on what you want, why you organize your estate that way. Okay, this will help head off a lot of infighting with the families. So, if you don't intend on leaving, one of your heirs, if they're going to be cut out of the will or cut out of the estate in some form or fashion, ideally you're going to have that conversation now, but at very minimum, write a letter, put it with your trust or will, inform your executor or executrix so they understand and they can help navigate that situation. Okay, what we get, and I tell a story plainly outlined in Money for Tomorrow, if two kids are arguing with each other, that could be like $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 lost right there in legal bills as the two kids work out who didn't get what. Okay, why were things breaking up the way they were? Okay. Also tell your executor or executrix where all the documents are and how to access them. Okay, again, this can take a lot of pain and headache out of your transition plan. Now, I want to move on to kind of the last topic about setting up the board and educating your heirs. But I want to continue the story that we did with our two grandfathers, because grandfather number two, we all agreed that from a financial standpoint, he was able to travel, and do things, a lot of things that grandfather number one did. But he was in probably a better financial position. Let's take a look at his two sons. Okay. Grandfather number two had two sons. They both went to school, got married, had kids, had very successful careers, and invested in the stock market. Son number one had health issues that almost caused bankruptcy. All right. Son number two had health issues too. Okay. And started investing in real estate at the age of 60 years of age. All right. Here's the thing. In both cases, there's some failures here. One, the biggest failure being, why did neither one of the sons know how to invest? If the grandfather had already cracked the code, if the father had already cracked the code, why did he not teach his kids? Okay. So my grandfather never taught his sons, one of them being my father, the fundamentals of wealth building. Okay. And just by that knowledge not transferring, it didn't transfer on to myself or my cousins. All right. So be that transitional character in your family and help, whether you leave your family money or not, leave them the knowledge that you're gaining. Okay. Leave them a blueprint. Right. And this is why most people fail in their wealth building. Okay, is that they are not setting up, then they're learning these skills for themselves. They're changing their money mindset. You're here, you're changing your money mindset. You're building skills, you're building networks, but they don't help their successors do that. So take action. Okay. If you've got the book Money for Tomorrow, that is a great blueprint. Okay, review it for yourself. Teach principles to your heirs out of that book as well. Write a purpose statement for your trust. Okay, start teaching some of these principles. At minimal, leave it on a sheet of paper and put it with your trust or will. If you got young kids, think about the books you read with them, the games you play with them, the time you spend with them. Can you teach some of these skills? Create a value economy within your household. Okay, teach people, teach your heirs business building skills while they're still young and at home. Okay, help them make mistakes now so they're not making larger mistakes later. Another idea is record your journey. It does not have to be perfect. You don't have to write a book. even just like shooting quick, like little Zoom videos or Loom videos and dumping them in a Google Drive on like, here's this cool way, cool tactic that I learned, and leaving like a repertoire of like videos there. That's amazing too. But most importantly, if you have heirs, put them in a position where they can fail, because they're going to learn so much more by losing, working through, how to learn the skill, testing the skill, maybe even losing like $10, $100, or $1,000 now, because we want them to learn from those failures so they don't make larger failures later. All right, guys. Again, my question to you, are you going to be that transitional character in your family? This is a lot to take in. Hopefully you found it useful. I want to leave a little bit of time to open up for our Ask Me Anything session. So go over to the chat box and start putting in your questions. Okay. As we're wrapping up, my question to you, winning the wealth game, are you interested or committed? All right. Are you interested in creating wealth, creating that wealth in your sleep, creating that passive income in your sleep so you can do what you want, when you want, with whom you want? All right. If you are, you got to learn how to win the game. You got to know the objective, the rules, and how to play successfully. Okay. And most people fail because they don't understand the objective. They don't read the rules. I mean, just think about any game that you play. They want a shortcut and don't want to put in the work, or they win from the cells and they lose it all at the finish line. That's not going to be you. Because when you learn how to master the game of wealth, you're going to be unstoppable.